Don't forget to catch up on my blog post at www.brandingjuice.wordpress.com. Again, that's brandingjuice.wordpress.com. And please, please, please go onto my Facebook page at Livin The Dream Radio Show with J. Blair Brown. That's Livin, Livin apostrophe. Livin The Dream Radio Show with J. Blair Brown. So let me take in a deep breath and introduce my guest. His name is Andre Joseph. He is a native New Yorker, and he shared his love for film at a very early age when he would make short films with family and friends. In 2001, Andre attended the New York Film Academy's summer program and experienced 16-millimeter film for the first time and hasn't looked back. He graduated magna cum laude from Emerson College in 2006, and by then he completed his first film called Overjoyed. We're going to talk about that. By 2008, he formed his own independent film production company called AJ Epyx Productions, LLC, and starred in its first production, Priceless, which he also wrote and directed, and which premiered at Tribeca Cinemas. His acting credits include the independent films Old Secrets, No Lies, and Hot Box. And behind the scenes, credit includes The Door, Heart and Soul, When the Devil Comes, and Outgoing. His next feature film, Dishonorable Vendetta, is set for release this year, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. Having said all that, I must introduce to you the man, the incredible Mr. Andre Joseph. Hello, Andre. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for giving us a voice for those who don't have one in the industry.
Oh, you know what? Hey, without you guys, we would not have an industry. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many voices that need to be told and so many stories that need to be told.
And I want to tell them all. So thanks for coming on. I'm always honored when you guys, spend some time with me because you guys know what's really happening out there. I'm not interested in big budgets and big studios. I mean, I'll take some money, but my focus really is with independent filmmaking. So before we start, I'd like to give you your 60-second snapshot. Can you tell us a little bit about you in 60 seconds?
Yes, I can. My name is Andre Joseph. I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York, where I currently reside. And I got into film at a very early age and decided to pursue it as a full-time career. So I took a 4-week course at a New York Film Academy. And then from there, after I got through my high school diploma and also my associate's degree at Tallahassee Community College, I attended film school over at Emerson College for their visual media arts program, where I graduated in 2006. And since then, I started my first film, Priceless, and at the same time, I had started my first production company called AJ Epyx Productions. And as a company, we not only produce just films, but we also produce music videos, commercials, and we can also come out to videotape your weddings, your private parties, your bar mitzvahs, whatever fits your fancy, and we can package them, produce them onto a DVD. And, basically we're involved in all sorts of media and, just trying to keep plugging along, trying to evolve as much as we can and to try to make some noise for the industry to take notice.
Mm-hmm. So you're full service, definitely.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Wow, okay. No wonder you're always so busy. I follow you on Facebook, and I'm like, this guy just does not sit down. He's always doing something. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us about your upbringing.
My upbringing was basically, it was interesting. My father, he's a dentist. He has a private practice here in Staten Island, and he runs the residency program for the dental ward over at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn. And my mother, she actually worked for a printing company. She used to work for Daniel's Printing, and they used to do the programs for all the Madison Square Garden events for like the Knicks and the New York Rangers. And then also, I spent most of my life in Staten Island with friends, with family. But, of course, most of my family lived in Brooklyn. So another part of my life was also spent right there with my grandmother's apartment which is right down on Ocean Avenue, where also my aunt and my uncle used to live. And that's usually where I was pretty close with my cousins. I mean, to me, they were like the brothers and sisters that I didn't have here at home in Staten Island. And, we were a pretty handful bunch, and, we just loved having fun. We just loved watching a lot of cartoons and, a lot of the TV shows that were around back in, like, the late 80s and the early 90s. So that was kind of me. Like, I just kind of absorbed what I was seeing on television. And with the action figures that I would be getting for my birthday, I would always try to make up all these little stories with them. And obviously it would only just be me, or it might be like my cousin. We would just make up stuff. And then I really didn't realize that I had like something of a knack for storytelling until I was in about third grade, and I was in a school where they actually gave out a creative writing program. So from there, I was always writing little different ideas, and sometimes a little bit more obscure than the next, but they kind of like caught on with a lot of my classmates. And, it was kind of like something that started as a hobby, but then I really started to take it seriously. So when I lived at my grandmother's house, well, at least when I used to visit, me and my cousins kind of got to a point where we're like, we're doing all these little charades and we're doing all this role-playing stuff here in the hallway. We should try to get our uncle's camera and see if we could film this. So, at the time we were probably like 10, 11 years old, and, my uncle, he didn't trust us with the camera. He thought he was going to pick it up and break it right off the bat. So we were always trying to, like, push him to give us the camera and just let us do something. And all the while, we would be, like, already coming up with ideas for what our movie would be. Like, we would be, like, cops running around chasing bad guys in the apartment, and we would do, like, the posters and write, like, a little script here and there. But my uncle, and even when my dad got a camera, they just flat out refused. They just didn't trust us. As hell. I mean, I couldn't handle my own toys, so how are they not going to be able to handle a camera?
Right.
But then finally, I was just about to get in high school, and I was on vacation with my uncle and my mom out in Hilton Head Island down in South Carolina, and I had two of my cousins there, and we started talking about it again. So I kept pushing my mom. She had just gotten a new camera, and we kept pushing her to, let us do something. We're here, and we're making all these friends down here by the pool. So she's like, okay, we'll let you use the camera. You just set the date. We have to approve the script, and, basically what an actual executive would do. Like, we're not going to let you do anything unless we know exactly what's going on here.
Right.
So,
right.
Basically from there, me and my cousins, we just wrote the script. We got a bunch of our friends. We set a date, and we wound up making, like, our first movie right down there. And, my parents thought it was just one of those hobbies that was just going to go away. But, every couple of weekends, I would get my friends over to my house, whether they were from school or even just my cousins, and we would just shoot stuff. And, that's pretty much how it began. It didn't stop from there.
Mhm. So by that time, by high school then, you really were sure that this was more than just a passing fancy. So which filmmakers had you begun to admire by that time?
By that time, it was interesting because I didn't really start to take notice of a lot of the behind-the-scenes people until I was, like, right around high school age. Because most of the time I was just idolizing all the big stars, like Sylvester Stallone and Harrison Ford and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, I was just so eager to get into the business then before they start to get old and their careers start to fall apart. But when it came to filmmakers, there were a couple names that stood out. Obviously, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. I grew up on almost everything that they were doing back then. But then, of course, there was, like, Richard Donner with all the Lethal Weapons and Superman, and Spike Lee, of course, because of Do the Right Thing. And, I could even never forget when my parents actually rented Do the Right Thing, and I must have been, like, 5 years old watching that movie without them knowing I was in the room. And then the next day, I'm, like, on the school bus just, like, going through this whole curse mode out of nowhere, and, like, the bus lady had to, like, go to my grandpa, who would have me over at the house before my parents picked me up, and he was kind of like, you know, what's going on? Like, nobody understood what was happening. And then my parents realized I had seen the movie, like, the night before. So, yeah, like, basically those guys were the ones that were very influential to me at that particular point, the ones that I would actually try to emulate their styles, even when I was just doing these short 8mm films with my friends.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I noticed about your films, they have a sincere message, and so there had to have been a time when you realized that you had the power to impress upon or even the responsibility in making film. When was that time, and how did you realize that?
You know, that's actually a very interesting story, because it actually happened right after I got out of New York Film Academy. Like when I got into Film Academy, I had already had like a couple of these short films under my belt, and I kind of like went out into that place thinking like, oh yeah, I've done like over 50 movies with my friends. You know, I pretty much have a knack for what's going on. And apparently I did not, because the very first minute that they gave us one of those 16mm Arriflex cameras that they used to use during wartime, during World War II, it was just like a whole different world, you know, just not only having to learn the mechanics of shooting film and the importance of lighting and editing, but also the aesthetics that go along with cinema, and trying to find ways to not just make it commercial art to just entertain a crowd, but to find actual art to it, to find out, you know, how do you get the best shots, how do you get the best composition, while at the same time telling a story that can move people or shock people or make people feel good. And then, you know, it started to kind of come together to me at that point. Like, yeah, it's all about making good stories and telling them visually. So, like, I was still in high school when I was done with Film Academy. I was in my last year, and a friend of mine encouraged me to go out and make a fan movie of the Punisher, the Marvel Comics character. You know, I had kind of toyed around with it for a while, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it because, you know, I wasn't, like, that ambitious at that time. But my friend encouraged me, like, yeah, go out, you know, make the costume and get a bunch of your friends. And that's what I did. I ended up writing a script for it, and the way I approached it was I wasn't just going to make this an action movie or what you see most comic book movies now, where it's all about the bang for the buck. I was going to try to go with it in a sense of, let me treat this more as a drama. Let me make this more about a guy who's lost his family and goes crazy, and then let the action kind of punctuate the drama and make it a little bit more intense and more exciting, and have like a point to it all, not just violence for the sake of violence. So once I knew I wanted to do that, then I didn't want to just like get my friends this time. I actually wanted to get real actors. And I went out and had a couple of friends who actually went to City College in Manhattan, who ran like a theater program, and I put out some flyers. I got a couple of good responses. Then I went out, I made the movie, and, I mean, it really didn't go anywhere. I just only showed it to, like, my classmates in school. But that's when I kind of realized that's where it's really got to be, like, finding a different vision of how to approach different genres without it just being all about entertainment, but really, like, where's the story? Where do you make it so that the audience can feel for the characters and feel for the situations?
That's very interesting. Very interesting. And good for you for using those resources. I think a lot of times, especially when people start out, they forget that they have resources. Like you said, you know, you have friends who are actually doing that, so why not utilize them? So good for you. Let me give a shout-out to those of you in the chat room, Kathleen and Tammy and Philip. And we have another guest. Thank you so much for listening. I know that there are several of you as well on the phone lines. And let me just give out that number again, guys. That number is 347-539-5805 to speak with our esteemed colleague, Andre Joseph, 347-539-5805. I want to go back to, you talked about 16 millimeter millimeter. Yes. Tell us what's the benefit of that, because you talked about, I was surprised to hear you mention the 16 millimeter. I know nothing of filmmaking, okay? So you mentioned the 16 millimeter and World War II. So I'm thinking, okay, we're going back like 60, 70 years. What's up here? What's going on? Tell us why that was necessary.
Well, I guess the importance of it, and this also really goes for a lot of film schools, is for a lot of young filmmakers to understand that they have to understand where film came from before they actually go out and actually do something of their own. Obviously, I didn't do that. I mean, I had video to go along with, but, you know, learning film, you have to understand that there's a structure to how you go about producing a film project, that it's not just having a camera and going into a free-for-all, but you have to sort of plan your shots. You have to, you know, have the right compositions, the right lighting, and, you know, kind of understand that there's a quality to this. Like, you know, when I was doing a lot of these video projects, you know, it's like anything else that you see. Like if you're just shooting home movies with your family, it's just kind of like that very clean but almost static-y looking picture. But with film, it brings something more to life, you know, between like if you're using black and white and you have like the grains and you have like the rich blacks and the rich whites that come across when you're watching it on a projector, you know, it's just having that understanding of, you know, this is kind of like where we began and this is how people viewed pictures. They saw it as being in a dark room and the audience being absorbed into what they're seeing, as opposed to just, you know, having something that you're just watching at home on television and you just like, you know, you sit there and, I don't know, you just kind of like laugh at it, you know, because you don't buy into it, especially if it is with your friends. But if it's actually something that's done with good quality and you believe the performances, you believe what you're seeing on screen, and that's kind of what matters. And whether that story translates to the mind of the viewer, I mean, that's really up to the person behind the camera who understands exactly how to work those mechanics.
Mm-hmm. You said something that reminded me of an interview I had with Tremaine Williams. He's out in L.A., but he said something similar by telling us that when he was in school, they had the class would have to study Breakfast at Tiffany's, and, you know, this is the brother, you know, so
right.
So you start bringing up Breakfast at Tiffany's and some other, what he thought at the time were really hokey movies, but he was saying it really had a value because of the way that the films were made back in the past as opposed to what you guys are doing today. So it brings a value, and just knowing the background, just what you just said, is really a learning experience in itself, which is another plug for up-and-coming filmmakers to really consider film school or some type of education in that genre.
Yeah, you know. Well, I would definitely say, for me, I was probably blessed, like, when I went to Emerson College, because they were very up-to-date with the technology that's out there now. They still taught us film. They still taught us the mechanics, just like New York Film Academy, but they were also trying to show us a different perspective, not just, you know, the films that were coming out in the 30s and 40s that were really shaping Hollywood to what it is today, but they were also showing us a lot of these experimental music videos from Spike Jonze and Chris Cunningham, and showing that there's other experimental ways of going about telling your stories, and basically trying to expand your imagination with the tools that you have in possession, whether it's having to edit your projects on Final Cut Pro or Avid, or to create digital effects with After Effects, or even having to really do up your websites with Adobe Dreamweaver, you know, just trying to show that there's so much more out there, so much that's more accessible compared to back then where, you know, if you went to film school in the 70s, it was much more difficult to make a movie, as you probably would know, because, you had to deal with working with film, and if you ran out, then you had to buy more, and it was always expensive, and the processing, it's a whole different story in itself. Whereas now, we have the technology with the Panasonics and the Canon 7Ds where you can actually get that same kind of film quality, and people will still believe, like, oh my God, they'll think that you spent like thousands of dollars on something that was shot on celluloid, when no, like, you actually did this digitally on a memory card and you put it into your computer, and there you go, like, you have like a masterpiece. But again, that doesn't stop you from, you still have to tell a good story, and you still have to try to stand out, and I think what's happening now is the fact that there's so many young people who are able to go onto YouTube, throw up their projects, and, no matter how stupid it may be, or no matter how great it might be, it's all about trying to get all those hits and trying to kind of like build up some sort of a reputation on there. But it's also more difficult now because of that. So for filmmakers of this generation, we have to be able to understand where we came from as filmmakers, so that we could stand out from the rest of the package, so that we could do more than just the cat playing the piano or the kid that's crying about Britney Spears and getting a million hits. There's a little bit more mechanics than that.
I think in a way it's been a blessing and a curse. The accessibility is wonderful, but by the same token, I think it misrepresents what it really takes to produce quality end film. And I'm not so sure everybody wants that. Some people just want the money. They just want the notoriety. But if you want quality film, then you have to put in your time. You have, like you said, a good story. It's got to have great acting. What good is having, the wonderful techniques without a good story, and the acting sucks? So, again, you talked about the young people coming up now. They just have to realize that it takes real effort. It's not as simple as ordering your stuff online and getting it in the mail, and, this weekend you're going to bang out a film. That's not the way it works, more times than not. So using your own film, Priceless, okay, walk us through the process of producing an independent film and all that it took for you to produce that.
Well, yeah, Priceless was a very ambitious endeavor when I actually started making the movie as soon as I got out of college. I had been writing the script for about 6 months before we started doing pre-production for it. I was actually writing it while I was still in college. So the whole idea with it was I wanted to do like a romantic heist movie, but emphasize more the romance element of it, because I felt that would be more different from, a lot of black films that you see now where it's just all about, let's just go for all the crime stuff and try to show, characters who try to like get out of business, but they have to go through all these crazy bad guys that they have to get through just so that they can get to Hawaii at the end of the movie. I wanted to kind of like put a slant on that. So I worked on it for about 6 months, and I already had a friend who was pretty good friends with this casting director by the name of Donna McKenna, who operates out of Long Island. And she's had a really good reputation. She's done a lot of successful independent films, many of which have won some awards at film festivals. But it wasn't easy to get her because she had a pretty rough fee. So I knew I was going to have to try to go and get investors if I'm going to go out and make this film. Like, I already had some people for crew, and I had a couple of people in mind for actors, but if I was going to get quality actors who were, unfortunately, they were in the union, but were nonetheless great actors, then I was going to have to get some serious investors for it. So I didn't go through the channels of getting a grant because I was so desperate to make the movie. My dad had friends who were fellow dentists over Kings County, and they were always interested in helping me out once I got to a point when I wanted to make a big film. So I had to put together a business proposal for the amount of money that we needed to produce the film, which I think was like around $20, $25 grand. And basically had like a limit on how much they could put in. As far as like they couldn't just put in $1. It had to be like at least no less than $100. So I was able to get a couple of investors through that who were willing to help out, and through that I was able to get insurance. I was able to get my casting director, and I was able to get the wonderful crew that I had on that film. And had it not been for them, it wouldn't have been as special as it is to me now. So I went about doing all that, and then through my casting director, we got union actors from the Screen Actors Guild who were phenomenal at what they were able to do, some of which have some very extensive credits to their belt. And I didn't get a chance to audition with them because that would have been more expensive to do because you have to pay the actors to do rehearsals. But with the non-union actors that I got some fabulous people. Tasha Perry, who is also like an up-and-coming actress. She was an American Gangster, and she's on a TV show called 601, which is actually online right now. You could look it up on YouTube. And also the great Bernard Purdy, who's like the world's most recorded drummer, who was able to play a very pivotal role in the film. And the list just goes on and on. I mean, there were just so many phenomenal people involved. And like anything else, there had to be a structure to it, and I worked with my crew in terms of doing storyboards, trying to get out locations, and that's another thing too, the locations. A lot of them were either like friends' houses or businesses where I knew the owners, and had to obviously come with location release forms and certificate of insurance to make sure that none of their properties would be destroyed.
Right.
So, yeah, like I was able to try to do everything through that. And it was a very wonderful experience overall. But, again, like it wasn't easy with the money part because there were times where I was kind of like starting to go dangerously low on funds. And, whatever money I'd already saved up was not enough. So I would sometimes have to go back to my investors for help, and because they were really cool with my father, they were able to help out when the time was really needed, and I was able to make do with it. So obviously once I got the film done, that was one thing, but then the post-production was a whole different story, because this wasn't just something that I could just do on Final Cut Pro. I had to get some real professionals behind it. So after I edited the movie by myself, I went to Bernard. He did the original score for the film and had like a great, fantastic set of jazz musicians who were really able to create a wonderful score. And then I had to get my movie color corrected, trying to take what was already there in terms of picture quality and trying to make it look more like film than it already did. And I had to go out to a place called Film Look Inc. out in Los Angeles. They basically went in and touched up the picture and really made it look nice, let the colors stand out, and really gave it more of a film quality than just something that I had shot on video. And then another guy named Bill Donnelly, who ran a company called Laughing Dog Studios, he was the one who did my final sound mix. So once all those elements came together and we had the premiere trifecta, I mean, it was like, even I was watching it and thinking, oh, my God, that's me. Like I felt like I was watching a huge budget movie. But it took a lot of hard work, and it wasn't easy to do, and it was a very expensive movie to obviously produce. But it's all about perseverance. At the end of the day, the money has to be able to be spent wisely, because if it goes into other different directions, then you're screwed. But spend it on the right things. Spend it on the insurance, getting the best crew, the best actors possible, and you're guaranteed a good quality product in the end.